Hello, everybody. I hope you're doing fantastic. A little Christmas greetings from all of us here at Oaky in Amsterdam and Singapore. 2020, eh? What a year it's been. Incredible, challenging, and fascinating all at the same time. For us at Oaky, I think the very first point when we realized something very new and very different was happening was when we, for the first time, pulled the plug on the massive event called ITB in Berlin, where we were all going to go to and for the very first time have our own booth at this conference. And pulling the plug to that conference, I think it really showcased to us that this thing is for real and it is going to impact our industry in ways that we perhaps never could have imagined. And looking back now, almost a year later, I wanted to reflect a little bit about what it was that we thought the industry would look at and the things that we're seeing actually happening. And to help you look at upselling and how it changed the way that hotels look at their strategy, we interviewed 10 of our best performing hotels in countries such as Russia, Sweden, Holland, and the US. And we asked them, how did you acclimatize to the new situation? How did you implement upselling as a strategy to make your guests happier, meet new guest needs, but also certainly try to smoothen operations and make sure that you as a hotel maintain culture, teamwork, and ultimately profitability back to your business? Before going into that, I wanted to say from all of us here at Oaky to all of our dear customers and partners, it's been a fascinating year and we are truly so honored to be your partner in these times. And it's been a real surprise and with proper fascination that we've seen hoteliers that used to compete in the same destination now promoting their destination as one big thing for travelers to come to. And also on the other side, for us specifically in the tech space, seeing technology partners come together in order to create solutions and new innovations that have never been possible before. A positive surprise that we think have generated a heightened amount of innovation and new cool services that guests will enjoy forever. So when we look at what has changed in 2020, we, first of all, when we saw that this was happening in March, we forecasted that there will be a big thing around social distancing. And when you're into upselling, you know that the number one upsold item always, practically always, is the breakfast buffet in hotels. So we forecasted that this very likely will be the end of the breakfast buffet, or the breakfast buffet will need to change. A big cash cow for many hotels, and as such, their upselling strategy could be a way to accommodate new guest needs in order to eat breakfast, perhaps in the room or in different ways than before. But the changing guest behavior was much more, we saw, than just social distancing and moving from physical to digital touch points. We've seen that while guests really have been wanting to have a safe and healthy stay, and I've put that very high on the priority list, many guests have not been able to travel for so long, and as a result of being kind of quote-unquote locked up inside of the country, not being able to do international travel, when they do travel, they want memorable experiences. And they have been expecting the hotels to give them memorable experiences, to the hotels to go out of their way to provide for them. But we've also seen that guests have been willing to pay for this. While demand has heavily decreased over the past 9 months, it's been coming back and up, and demand has shifted very greatly across different types of properties. But the one thing that we've seen across all of our thousands of properties across 100 countries is that the average spend per guest has increased. And this told us something very interesting. It told us that the upselling strategy for any hotelier is now maybe more important than ever as a tool to use in your arsenal to try to increase occupancy, but also maximize revenue from the fewer guests that is traveling to your hotel, while, and very importantly, at the same time, enhancing their guest experience. And having said that, we saw a very interesting shift in guest behavior this year. Non-digital natives, people who are not used to using technology, they have embraced technology. My dad and many elderly people who are not used to using their phones are now taking pictures of QR codes wherever they're going to order food in restaurants or perhaps room service in a hotel. We think that guests being able to embrace technology, and especially those guests that have normally opted for offline services, are now embracing a new way of having a fantastic hotel experience. And that we see is a big opportunity for the hotel industry moving forward, because hotels can really benefit from the technological advancements in terms of smoothing and removing processes that you no longer need to do, so that you can instead focus on creating a better guest experience and spend more time with your guests, doing what hoteliers love, making guests happy. We also saw some very interesting things happening as a result of people being limited in the ways that they could travel abroad. There was much more domestic travel. We all know this. And as a result, in terms of upselling, a lot of people, they opted not for flights or trains and public transport, but they were all of a sudden driving to the hotels. And as such, we've seen an almost 300% increase in parkings being sold across many of our hotels. Another shift was of course, a very, very logical one, a steep decrease in business travel and an equally steep increase in leisure. Now, for upselling, this is very interesting, because typically a leisure traveler is spending much more on upselling and extras than a business traveler. So while hotels had lower demand than before, the demand was more prone to buying extras and pampering themselves and really looking forward to spending more money on their travel. And this created a part of this new idea that we have, which we call revenge traveling, which is that basically guests, they like to pamper themselves like never before, because now I get my one chance to travel, I will make the most of it. And that has resulted in a skyrocketing results in terms of a lot of in-house services, especially as many hotels have had the opportunity to have their restaurants open, while many restaurants in the cities in the destinations nearby have had to have it closed. Another very interesting part is that while, of course, most city destinations suffered with a low demand, the people that would normally travel to these cities, they opted to travel to countryside or seaside or mountains. And many of the hotels in these areas, they saw a better summer than they had seen in years. Now, what we found interesting was that when you had such insane amount of demand so suddenly, upselling became a little bit more complicated. Why is that? Well, it's because you have a big pressure on operations. And if you want to smoothen the operations, what these hotels started doing was some genius things. They started focusing a lot around selling F&B deals like set course dinners, lunch buffets, etc. And that resulted in them driving a lot of F&B revenue that they could already plan for, inventorize for, and that heavily reduced the workload eventually on a la carte reservations and also room service during the hotel stay, while still maintaining that uplift in F&B revenue. Another interesting thing was when you have such high demand on higher room categories, like many of these hotels did, there is less opportunity to sell room upgrades. Well, here comes another genius thing that we've been seeing a lot this year, called attribute-based selling or attribute-based upselling, where instead of selling a room upgrade, you sell attributes of that same room. We had a resort hotel in Sochi in Russia that figured out a genius way to upsell more from their rooms while still having almost 100% occupancy, by simply adding it as an extra that you could upgrade to one of their refurbished rooms. And I read what they did was basically they set this put this into Oaky. They had never upsold this attribute before. They could then experiment with the prices to see what reactions were. And when they hit the type of conversion they were happy with, that's where they landed on in terms of price. And now they are very happy to say that fresh design, as they say, as they call this deal, is one of their most popular upsells. Another interesting change that we've seen is, while in 2019 the booking windows were typically quite long, they have been shorter and shorter and shorter. And recent data that we've seen show that many bookings, up to 50%, happen just the day before arrival, and some even on the day of arrival. What means here is that there's an opportunity for hotels to add more channels than just reaching out to the guest via the booking engine perhaps, or the pre-arrival emails, by adding for example channels like SMS, text messaging, and even chatbots on the website. All of these channels which Oaky now integrate with, so that you can also present your upsells and ancillary services on these channels to the guest as well. Once again, another very exciting opportunity where we've, thanks to partnerships, be able to offer Oaky upselling across multiple touchpoints, across multiple channels, and ultimately giving guests what they want, a way to control their own stay by being more embracive of technology and the better guest experience, since they are able to make use of all of the services and upsells proactively whenever they want to, but not are bound to the traditional channels such as phone or offline when they are checking in. So that's a little bit about how guests' behavior changed and the change in demand. Now, we also saw that some of the best performing hotels, they didn't settle for just accepting demand. They said, we are going to take this into our own hands, and we are going to be in control of our own destiny. And what they did, and this is something that they almost all have in common, is that first of all, they realized that the demand was going to be different. It was going to be domestic travel. It was going to be a lot of people that were coming as leisure, and it was going to be a lot of couples. So what they did was basically created a lot of packages. Packages like date night, sleep in together with a brunch, and romantic love packages. And then they would market these packages online, on social media, SEA, etc., and get a lot of traction from domestic travel that were searching for exactly these types of experiences for a staycation, or maybe going to a city nearby. And then what they did was that they of course still received bookings that only booked the room the traditional way. So then what they did was they took these same packages and they broke them down and put them into Oaky, so that if a guest bought a package, they would see different upsell offers they hadn't booked already. And if they booked only a room, they would be able to upgrade to this romantic package, for example, or a date night, or do-it-yourself cocktails in the room, you name it. Some very exciting results came out of this, and the hotels that focused heavily around combining a smart marketing campaign, thinking about who are we going to target, and bringing that together in the upsell strategy, they really had the most success from Oaky. And in terms of total revenue, even if they sold their rooms at a somewhat lower ADR, combining it with the upsell strategy pre-arrival and at the front desk and in-stay, they were able to bring and offset some of that lost ADR and maintain a high total revenue per guest. And this we saw as just a fascinating and inspiring way that even in a crisis, you can be very innovative. And what we love most about it, perhaps, is that we've seen that from crisis comes teamwork. This is teamwork between the whole marketing team, the whole front office team, coming up with deals and packages they think their guests will like, all the way into the housekeepers or the people inside of the hotel in terms of operations, making sure that they can execute on these services and packages that they are being sold. So I love the saying, from crisis comes teamwork, and from teamwork comes innovation. So what about this breakfast then? I mentioned earlier that back in March, one of our big kind of assumptions and how do you call it? Our forecast, or what we predicted, was that this would be the end of the breakfast buffet. Well, we couldn't have been more wrong. When asking all of these hotels that have been the most successful in Oaky this year, what is your number one best-selling deal? It is still breakfast. However, the breakfast buffet has been somewhat reinvented. The breakfast buffet is no longer on a table where everyone goes to sit. It is presented to you very nicely on the table, more personalized way, or brought to you in the room. And there are other ways that hotels have created this and actually been able to increase the price for the breakfast. Again, playing into the part that while guests are caring about the amount of money they spend, they care more so about a memorable experience. And if you truly love a hotel breakfast, it's been shown that it's very successful to let your guests book the room or a package without breakfast included, wait a few days if you can, and try to upsell in breakfast, because then that psychological burden of spending another 25 euros or 15 euros per person is not so high. Going into 2021, we could not be more excited here at Oaky to keep on delivering value and trying to innovate and meeting the guest needs for 2021 as much as we can. We are working really hard to create a more advanced upselling solution for you, to make it easier for you to sell the right deal to the right guest at the right time. As I mentioned earlier, across multiple channels, depends on the right channel for the right guest, but also across multiple touch points of the guest journey. We will do so partly ourselves and partly with some of the amazing partners that we work with. But ultimately, we want to create a 2021 where we can help you automate as much as possible while ensuring that you have a fantastic guest experience, your brand can shine through, and you ultimately, through teamwork and using Oaky and us sharing all of the knowledge and expertise and best practices that we can back to you, create an upselling strategy that plays in your full 2021 strategy to make more guests happy and ultimately make more revenue and profit back to you as a hotel. From all of us here at Oaky, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, enjoy some well-deserved time off. I know we will, and see you guys in January.